Welcome, everyone, to the Inclusion Podcast. I'm Dr. Julie Costin.
And I'm Dr. Christy Preddy-Franzak. We're so glad you're here as we explore all things inclusion.
So whether you're a school leader, an educator, a parent, or simply passionate about inclusion, this podcast is for you.
In each episode, we go beyond the usual conversations, diving into what truly makes inclusive education work.
Together, let's make a difference, one conversation at a time. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 43. Today, we're talking about meaningful IEPs. And we're talking about meaningful goals. What? And what we mean is not everything needs to be a goal.
What? No, wait. No, I'll step back. I was still thinking about the paradox or the oxymoron of meaningful IEPs. So what do you mean not everything has to be a goal?
I mean, it is more useful to have fewer and more meaningful goals for kids who have IEPs. It is better to have fewer and quality goals than it is to have quantity, more and more and more and more goals.
Okay, but let's say I believe that, because you kind of got me in that last part where you're like quality over quantity, and I can kind of buy that.
Yeah.
But let's say I've got a kid that's got, needs in all body parts.
Sure, of course you do. And what we want you to do is be selective and thoughtful about what is IEP worthy or meaningful, and what should we actually write about and keep track of. Now, it doesn't mean we can't work on all sorts of things. In the general education content curriculum with peers, there are tons and tons and tons of things that kids are going to learn because, well, they have access to the general education content and curriculum and peers.
I just have to tell you a story because when you said, yeah, they're going to learn some stuff that's not on their IEP, I was doing a study long time ago about embedding goals and objectives. And I said to this dad what the purpose of the study was. And the purpose of the study was to see if when the teacher embedded SDI around IEP goals, if the kid would make progress. And he says to me, what else would they be doing?
Correct.
And I was like, oh, right. We do a lot of things that aren't related to IEPs. He's like, but why? Like, what else is there?
Right.
So that's twofold. It's like, one, we put everything in the kitchen sink that a kid's going to learn on the IEP, including the general curriculum. And two, we teach a lot of stuff that's not related to the IEP that, is just stuff. So we gotta figure out where the IEP fits in to stuff versus everything in the kitchen sink.
Right. And I think it's really important to think about the purpose of special education, and now we can jump into what IEP worthy goals would be. But the purpose of special education is access to general education content, curriculum, and peers. I think I said it 3 times. And if you're looking to get a tattoo, that's a really good one to get.
I think we say that every episode, but it's really good. I mean, we say that getting that particular tattoo is.
Yeah, it's my favorite tattoo, and I don't have it yet, but I'm going to get it. And it says general education content, curriculum, and peers. Meaning, okay. So if that's our job in special education, then when should it be a goal?
Yeah, and so that's the litmus test. That's where we go. Okay, does this IEP goal ensure access, participation, and progress in the general education content, curriculum, and peers? And for preschoolers, we mean daily activities. So don't you all worry. We're going to walk you through what we call 4 filters. It's the download for this episode. So at inclusiveschooling.com/download 43, you'll get a handout with what Julie and I call the 4 filters. Now, if you look in federal law in the United States, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act of 2004, you won't find the word filter. But if you read through all of the language around our obligations under IDEA for writing IEP goals, you will find that these filters help you be in alignment. Okay.
And I wish you saw when Christy was saying the word filters, her hands went about a foot apart and then closer together and closer together and closer together, like a funnel.
Like a funnel.
And so what we want you to think about it as each of these filters, if it's a yes, then they get closer to the second filter, which if it's a yes, then they go to the third filter. And if that's a yes, and then they go to the fourth filter. And Christy, if I were to start a fifth filter, which is not on here, it would be, does this goal get them access to content, curriculum, and peers would be the first actual rung of the filter in order to make it an IEP worthy goal.
Yeah. And I think it's implied across them, but I think you could start out at the top or at the bottom as a final check or as the initial check. Because if it was the initial check, it probably could get kicked out really fast.
Okay.
But a little bit it's implied in the sense of like when we talk about it require specially designed instruction? Because to your point, specially designed instruction, AKA special ed, is by definition access to. So if you're not removing a barrier and increasing access, then you're not doing SDI. So I think you could, if you wanted to simplify it, friends, you could either add it as the top filter and not worry about what Julie and I are going to show you. You could also make it your last check just to be sure that through all this verbiage we're going to give you, that the bottom line is covered. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let's tell you what we have for you today. So on the download that Christy has already kind of shared with us for episode 43, you are going to see this 4 filters. And if you picture it like a funnel, the top filter is, does the need for this goal stem from the child's disability? So the question is, if you're going to make it a goal on an IEP, the question is, does this need stem from the child's disability?
And I think, Julie, to your point about the access question, this first filter is the hardest one for people to conceptualize. So adding your new filter might make it kind of null and void.
Right. And so I'll just use my son, Sam. He's legally blind. And so his need, Christy, how would we put one of his needs? His need is around visual fatigue. That's the need. The problem is his eyes get super tired. And so there's a need based on his nystagmus and his visual condition that causes him to need supports.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, yes, it is because of his disability. So he would make it through the first filter.
Yes. That need makes it through the first filter.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, it's not going to make it through all of them. Right. But it's very clear for things like a visual impairment that's why we're talking about it. Like, yes,
that's right.
There's others that are harder, like intellectual disability, categorical labels, or otherwise health impaired or developmental delay, where we can't really pin it back to a body part, where it starts to get a little bit harder for people because they're like, yeah, they have autism, so that's why they're here. No, just because you have autism doesn't mean that you can't have access, participate, and make progress. So you have to kind of dig around in this one a little bit more to understand how their disability is going over to filter number 2. So sometimes people will give it a pass just because the kid qualifies.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes I say, this is a 504 kid.
Well, spoiler alert, Sam has a 504.
Right. So it's like, you're going to try to say, yes, they have visual impairment. Let's keep going. You're never going to make it, but they still have needs. So they're probably a 504. Okay.
So yes, sometimes they're not going to make it through that first filter and sometimes they will.
Yeah.
And in this case, the visual fatigue is a need. It stems from the disability. The second filter, Christy, talk about that.
Okay. So the need must have an adverse impact on daily activities, not just low performance. So as humans, we are going to struggle with things, not be good at things and so forth. But again, let's just keep using Sam because I think it's it's an obvious example. Like, it's not a lot of nuances to it. That, this need, this visual fatigue is having an adverse effect on his ability to do daily activities, meaning it's harder for him, let's just say, or it takes more energy or it takes other resources. Doesn't mean that he is bad at it. Doesn't mean that it's a deficit. It just means, I have to be aware of there's something else going on that maybe otherwise wouldn't be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so visual fatigue really affects his vitality, his mood, his emotion, and his strength in daily activities. Meaning, if I'm not careful, if he's not careful, by the end of the day, he'll be in tears
Yeah.
because he's too visually fatigued. He did too much. And it certainly impacts the quality of his life and day.
And when you think about stressors, and we've talked about this like in episode 34, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
that's a stressor for him. Like it's
Yeah.
a biological thing that's constantly draining his system. So
Yeah.
if he appears unmotivated, or if
Right.
he struggles on a test, or if he has lack of bandwidth for social interaction, it could be stemming from this stressor. So we could
Mhm.
still say it's having an adverse effect. Okay. So we're
That's
going to
right.
let it go through two filters.
Okay. So with filter one is, does it stem from the disability? Yes
Yep.
or no? Filter two is, does it have an adverse impact on the child's progress participation in life
Right.
and school? And then the third one is, does it need or require specially designed instruction? Ooh, it's not going to pass this one, Christy, because you can't teach Sam to not be so visually fatigued. Now, you can teach Sam all sorts of supports and ways around it. Those would be supplemental aid supports, not services, but supplemental aids and supports that are going to help Sam
Be a service to begin with. It could be a vision specialist who gave some ideas or some suggestions. It's okay.
Yeah, but that's why, nope, it's not an IEP worthy goal. Now, in this case, Sam has a 504, and that's why, because none of Sam's visual supports require specialized instruction. We can't teach Sam to see better. We can't teach Sam to not be so visually fatigued, but we can provide all sorts of support. So this kid goes to 504. Now, most of the time when you're going through this IEP worthy goal list, you're not deciding that 504 or not. You're saying, is this a goal or isn't it? So does it stem from disability, number one? Does it have an adverse impact, number two? Does the kid need specially designed instruction, not exposure, practice, or maturation? So let's say the answer to that is yes. What's the last filter, Christy?
Okay, so then the last filter, let's just pretend it had gone all the way through for whatever reason. It was a different variation of
Okay.
and let's say his visual impairment was such that he needed to learn Braille, he needed to learn mobility, he needed to learn how to find things in his environment, blah, blah, blah. Then the need must be something that can be acquired within a year of typical development. All that one is saying, friends, is that an IEP has a shelf life of 1 year. You all know that you rewrite and update IEPs annually in the United States. So it's just saying, don't supersede human development.
Mm.
So if most humans don't learn something in 1 year's time of growth or maturation, you can't expect a kid with a disability to supersede human development.
Mhm.
There was a study of speech and language pathologists where, Julie, they had a language goal and the kid met it before the year's end. So they kept increasing the goal's complexity, and they were superseding what humans can learn in language or often learn in language in a year, both
Mhm.
in terms of sound production and length of utterance,
Mhm.
because the IEP was not a year old. So they had to learn another skill and another skill to the point that they superseded human development. I think that also happens like with reading. So a kid is off grade level, and we say the kid's going to make up multiple years of grade level reading in 1 year. If the kid could make up multiple years of reading in 1 year, they probably didn't have a reading problem in the first place. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
you're not that magical. Sorry, friends. So
Mhm.
we just, we have to be careful what the goal is. So this one sort of kicks out 3 and 4 usually kick out a lot of needs. And 3, the filter about it requiring SDI says, oh, the kid just needs some support and exposure. They just need to go to 4th grade for a while, or they need some practice at how to implement these strategies that allow me not to be so fatigued, or I just need to get older where my prefrontal cortex develops. 4th filter says, oh, I'll get this. I just need to get older by a year, or have some time pass. And so don't supersede what's even possible in terms of development or learning.
Yeah. So we hope that these IEP worthy goals and these 4 filters help you make really good decisions on creating meaningful IEP goals that students can make real progress on, and not to have tons and tons and tons of goals, but very selective goals that make sense for this particular student.
And be sure to get the download at inclusiveschooling.com/download 43.
Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe and catch up on past episodes where we share valuable insights, straight talk, and practical steps to challenge outdated special education practices. You can find every episode with the show notes at inclusiveschooling.com/inclusion-podcast to build more inclusive schools together.